Hello and welcome to today's broadcast. Hope you're having a fantastic day wherever you are and whatever you may be doing. Unless, of course, you're engaged in jihad. In that particular instance, not so much. You're doing a bad thing and good people are going to get hurt. So, don't have a good day. Only means bad things for other people. All right, ladies and gentlemen, trying to get back involved. Today is usually broadcast day over at BTR, and unfortunately I had a series of technical glitches that made it impossible. Part of it was simply my fault, part of it was not, but it made it impossible for me to do the entire broadcast over there. So what I wanted to do essentially was complete the broadcast here, because I was literally in mid-sentence when I got cut off and no longer could continue. So here I am, here in the wonderful world of Spreaker, and we're prepared to go ahead and continue the thought process where I was at. But I know that some of you will not go over to BTR and listen in to the first part of the show. So I'm going to do a quick recap of what we've covered earlier, and then I'm going to go on to where I was at when I got cut off, so that the folks who were listening at BTR, and for the folks that want to hear the conclusion of the thought process, will have that opportunity as well. They can either come here or go forward. Of course, this show is available the same as the other at iTunes, Stitcher.com, TuneIn.com, and several other places I can't think of right off the top of my head. But at any rate, I want to definitely get into it. Now, first and foremost, at the very top of the show, I gave a brief essentially eulogy, I guess, but not so much. The thought process behind the fact that I'm genuinely saddened by the loss of Fred Thopson. Thopson was a United States Senator for the state of Tennessee. He is well known as an actor. He was a litigator before he got into politics. He's a man who came up from humble beginnings, and he made his way to where he is, where he was, by virtue of standing on principle, keeping his promises, and doing what he always thought was in the best interest of everyone, as opposed to just his own personal interests. He was a role model for what the conservative message should be as it's projected and shared. He was an individual that I, in fact, had the opportunity to have in-depth conversations with while he was serving as a senator here for my home state. And every time I came away from one of those conversations, I came away thinking that this man is exactly what has been missing in Washington, D.C. On a personal note, he was the very first person to tell me that I should be involved in talk radio. It's not the primary reason I'm here broadcasting today, but was a factor. Because what he told me at that point was his rationale, his belief that I should be, was because I was always asking the right questions. And when it comes to politics, asking the right questions sometimes is the hardest and the trickiest part. It's something that we all need to be doing when it comes to holding our elected officials accountable to us. And I finished up simply by saying that the world lost one of its brightest shining lights with the passing of Fred Thopson about a week ago today. Because he was everything that, for the past week, we've heard everyone say that he was. He was a great litigator. He was a great statesman. He was a very shrewd politician. He utilized his southern wit and his southern charm to maximum levels, allowing him to operate within a room to be underestimated and then still be able to make his point with people who would never have willingly agreed with him in a million years. I, for one, miss him terribly. And although we weren't close personal friends by any means, in fact, I doubt that if he would even remember me at this point, it had been so long since we'd had one of these conversations. But Tennessee and Hollywood didn't just lose one of their stars, one of their favorite sons. America didn't just lose a statesman, but the whole world lost a truly great man. At that point, I then started talking directly about the paradox, the logic paradox, when it comes to the self-identifying liberals and how they look at the Keystone XL Pipeline. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time going back over that, but the bottom line is this. There is a lot of hypocrisy involved here, and the questions that the liberals really need to be asked about this, especially the ones that were this past Friday celebrating and just going absolutely crazy. Yay! Obama stopped the Keystone Pipeline. Yay! Those people need to really be asking, why are you cheering? You need to ask them, why are they cheering? Someone please explain to me, because it's this point that it's pretty obvious they don't know what actually happened when Barack Hussein Allahu Akbar Obama did not approve the Keystone Pipeline extension. They know very little about the tar sands oil incident, obviously. But for those of you who are listening and don't know much about it, I will be happy to recap right here and let you know why this is a big deal and a tragedy for the left that it didn't get approved. First and foremost, the tar sands is the result of a natural disaster in which there was an underground oil reserve that managed to bubble its way to the top. An ecological disaster, if you will. And the efforts of individuals to clean up this naturally occurring oil spill is to collect the oil and the sands that are in question, to clean the sand and return the clean sand to the area that it needs to be. So this is an ongoing effort for an environmental cleanup. This is going on in Canada. So point number one, nothing is going to change as far as oil being taken from the tar sands. Point number two, nothing is going to change as far as how it is being moved. Because right now it's being loaded on trains and it's being moved about to wherever it's being refined. Some of which is within the United States, just FYI. So it's being transported either via train or via tanker truck. Now, Mr. and Mrs. Environmentalist, who was celebrating the shutdown of the project as a potential means of moving the oil to specialized refineries in the United States, did you actually do anything to protect the environment in this effort? The quick answer is no. I'm sure you've been convinced that it is. I'm sure that the message you have gotten is that this was what's best for the environment. But, excuse me, again, in a quick recap of what we discussed in today's earlier broadcast that I didn't get to complete. Bottom line is, pipeline is safer. Pipeline, oh no, there's a leak. Guess what? You can shut it off before very much has leaked. Small amounts. Maybe even so small as to not even actually need a cleanup, although a response team can and will be sent, I promise you. The impact to the environment would be minimal. But now let's take a look at how it's going to be transported now. Primarily by train, right? Well, nothing ever happens to trains. They're never derailed. What happens when a train carrying oil or other petroleum products derails? Well, almost without fail, there's rupture of the car, so there's spillage at the very least. A lot of spillage, hundreds of gallons worth of spillage, affecting the environment, getting into the water table, killing plants and animals, possibly killing people, although I know for the environmentalists, the effect to humans are much less of a concern, if a concern at all. After all, hey, there's just way too many of us, right? We are what's killing the planet, after all. Jeesh. And, let's take it to worst possible scenario. Guess what? Fire. There's explosions. There's burning. There's chemicals being released into the air, again further polluting and poisoning our poor, sad world. Now, granted, it's not very likely that trains are going to derail when you look at how many trains are operating every day, and there are professionals, they're handling their business. But you see, the flip side of that coin is the fact that the majority of train derailments most people never hear about unless it happens in their own backyard. It's not something that's typically reported as national news, mostly because it's common enough that it's not a big news story, unless there's some crazy, scary chemical that's involved. And just FYI, oil would not fall into that category for most news agencies. Now, let's say that instead of on the train, it's on a truck instead. Well, okay, that's... okay, it's on a truck. We certainly never see semi-rigs having accidents on our interstate highways, do we? The odds of a big rig being involved in an accident carrying oil are the same as any other vehicle on our highways. The odds of one of these trucks, again, being damaged enough that there's leakage, or worse, well, it's better than 70% if it's actually involved in an accident of any kind. So, when you look at the total number of trucks required to move the amount of oil we're talking about, then you're almost guaranteed to have more spillage and more environmental impact having them run on these diesel trucks. But by the way, diesel is one of those big pollutants. You're adding those fluorocarbons to the atmosphere, just delivering them that way. There's no use of diesel fuel and using the pipeline. So even if there's never an accident, you've already worsened the environment by using the trucks. And now that I think about it, aren't most train engines run on diesel these days? Pretty sure that's the case. So even without... It's what you're telling me, that even without the possibility of an accident, that you're already still having a much larger negative impact on the environment by using the diesel fuel involved with moving it via train or truck than you would have with the pipeline? Yes, that is what I'm telling you. And it's the truth. But don't ever let anything like the truth get in the way of telling a great narrative. Like Barbara Boxer, who was out there telling everybody how this is some of the dirtiest,